Hi, this is Mrs. Politsky, and eighth graders, I have your notes for Chapter 5, Section 3, A Call to Arms. So, we're going to talk about the First Continental Congress. This began in September 1774 in the city of Philadelphia. And a few of the delegates, now granted, there were a lot more than the ones that are in the bullet points below, but these are probably more some of the famous names. We had future President John Adams, his cousin Sam Adams, Patrick Henry, John Jay, Richard Henry Lee, who happens to be the father of Robert E. Lee of Civil War fame, and first President George Washington. And some of the things that they were discussing at this Continental Congress, the members called for a repeal of 13 acts of Parliament. They called for a boycott of all trade with Britain, and they approved what is known as the Suffolk resolves, which called for the colonists to arm themselves, which I'm sure if the British had learned about this, they would probably have been very paranoid. So let's talk about the fighting. April 1775. Thousands of British soldiers were in and around the city of Boston. King George III had given an order to General Thomas Gage to get rid of militia weapons and to arrest any of the militia leaders. And so he had sent about 700 British troops, that is Thomas Gage, to the city of Concord, which is today would be kind of like a suburb of Boston, to seize and destroy weapons and munitions that the militia had stored there in a little arsenal. And the well-prepared militia companies in Massachusetts had been training for a while, and they had gotten pretty good, and they were given a nickname called the Minutemen, so that they would be prepared in a moment's notice. General Thomas Gage and his British troops were on the go to Concord to destroy all the artillery and ammunition when Dr. Joseph Warren, who happened to be a colonist, who saw British troops march out of the city of Boston on the night of April 18th, 1775, rushed to alert Paul Revere and William Dawes. Revere and Dawes rode to Lexington to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock of the move of British soldiers. Now, William Longfellow, who happened to write a poem called The Riot of Paul Revere, or The Midnight Riot of Paul Revere, focuses on Paul Revere and the glory that he had, but truth is he got apprehended by the British fairly early into the riot and never quite made it, but William Dawes did. But we didn't write a poem about him, so that's kind of the bummer here. So you can see in the painting below the North Church and the lanterns that supposedly were in the church, one if by land, two if by sea. That's kind of how that goes. Anyway, in Lexington, the Redcoats came across a group of 70 Minutemen led by Captain John Parker, and the fight for independence was on. Outnumbered, the Minutemen fell back, allowing the British troops to move towards Concord. That's fine. At Concord, the British troops burned the few weapons that they found, but they also met a group of Minutemen near Concord's North Bridge. And this forced the British to turn back. Along the road from Concord to Boston, colonists fired upon the British, wounding about 174 soldiers. Not bad for 70 some odd Minutemen. And they killed about 73. Not bad. The underdog strikes. So, more military action is going to take place. And Americans found that British soldiers were planning to attack New York from Canada. The Americans decided to get the upper hand and attack first. So they sent soldiers northward from Fort Ticonderoga to capture the city of Montreal, Canada. Oui. Benedict Arnold, who happened to be a captain in the Connecticut militia, and about 400 men joined his militia. They were sent to capture Fort Ticonderoga on Lake Champlain. He was joined by Ethan Allen and the Vermont militia that was kind of better known as the Green Mountain Boys, because Vermont's kind of the tail end of the Appalachian Mountains. It's kind of hilly, a lot of trees, a lot of forested areas. Yeah, it makes sense. Anyway, they surprised and attacked the British at Fort Ticonderoga, forcing the British to surrender the fort on May the 10th, 1775. Later in the war, Benedict Arnold sold information, military information, to the British and joined the British cause. And as a result of that, he will forever be known as a traitor in U.S. history. So, in 1775, the British Army was in control of Boston. The Patriot cause was growing with about 20,000 militiamen in and around that region of Boston. Colonel William Prescott and his militia, they set themselves on Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill, right across the harbor from Boston. Today, these two hills kind of look like they're just right in the middle of Boston, which technically they are in this day and age. But at one point in time, they were quite a distance away. As a matter of fact, the harbor that's there, there's quite a lot of that water that has been actually reclaimed as land, because over the years, dirt has been brought in to kind of close the gap, so to speak. So, June 16th, 1775, we have the Battle of Bunker's Hill, which began, and Colonel Prescott, knowing that his soldiers were running out of ammunition, he told them and inspired them, "Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes." Which, truth be it, since these men were using muskets, that was kind of the way you used a musket back in those days, because the accuracy was kind of lousy. And in this case, you didn't want to waste any ammunition, any of those musket balls and gunpowder. So waiting is probably not a bad idea. Anyway, the British attacked multiple times that day, only to get the upper hand when the militia ran out of ammunition and had to retreat. And so the British won, but they suffered heavy losses. So I guess we made them pay for it. So, as news spread of the event, colonists had to decide to rebel or stay loyal to Great Britain. So, colonists who were determined to fight for independence from Britain were known as the Patriots, and those who remained loyal to King George were known as Loyalist. Huzzah! Thank you very much.